To start this course, I wanted to take a look at a generic UX design workflow and see how Figma fits into that workflow. I also want to discuss the Figma feature set and mention just a few things that set Figma apart or that might be a little different, and also show a bunch of the current tools that compete with Figma for your projects. So let's dive in and answer, what is Figma? Let's start by looking at a generic UX design workflow. Now, UX stands for User Experience Design, and it's something that a lot of us have heard of these days and maybe actually doing it. But user experience design is a little different from just straight up web or app design. It really means that we're diving into the customer, what they need, their pain points. We're figuring out who they are. We're doing a lot of things like research, different types of research that is. We're creating what are called personas to find out who that generic customer is. We're also creating user flows, which basically mean how they go through the app or how they go through the website. They get from point A to point B. We're taking all that information and then we're starting to wireframe. We're creating low fidelity wireframes, which are usually like gray boxes and text and things like that, where we don't care about imagery, colors, fonts, or full-fledged designs, or both. Then we're creating a working prototype. We're trying to figure out, okay, before we build this widget, maybe an app, maybe a website, how can we make it to where people can test it out on device? They can tap on a button and go to another screen, for instance, and actually get a feel for how it's going to work. We can then share it with people, test it, gather feedback, and then start to iterate or make changes based on the feedback we receive. And finally, we're going to go out and build. Now, this is really generic. Depending on your project, your company, whatever, there could be a lot of other points in here. Figma actually fits squarely right in here. So it's going to allow us to go in and design, wireframe if we want, low fidelity or high fidelity, create a prototype right within Figma, share it, test feedback, gather that feedback, and then iterate, keep going. I just wanted to mention that there are a lot of tools out there for designing, prototyping, sharing, essentially UX design. We do have Figma. We have Adobe XD, which really does a lot of this as well. We have Sketch, we've got InVision, Proto.io, Marvel, and just so many more to even count. But I just wanted to make you aware that there are a lot out there. Figma is just one tool that we can use. Figma actually calls itself a collaborative interface design tool. Now, what does that mean? It just means that people are using it for UX design, for websites, for apps, that type of thing, but we can share it, we can create a prototype right within the tool. Now, you can, if you want in there, like I said, create a UX UI design. You can work with components, which are actually called symbols in a lot of applications. You can apply effects like drop shadows, different things like that, blurs. In Figma, artboards are called frames, and you'll learn that pretty quickly. There are also pages we'll discuss. We have the ability to look at or work with versioning to version our content so we can go back in time if we don't like a version of something. We also have vector networks, which are just a different way to draw. You'll see it's pretty cool, actually. We can share in real-time collaboration, which is pretty impressive, honestly. You can see different people looking at it at the same time as you, right within the project. We have team projects and sharing different content. We have commenting in real time. We have prototyping. And we also have code. You can look at and copy code from certain features or objects within the prototype or the design. So with a basic understanding of what Figma is, let's jump in. If you come to the exercise files folder and you open it up, you'll see that it's broken down by chapter. And if you go into each of these, you'll see that some of them actually have some what are called fig files. Some have some of those fig files. Some have images. Some have nothing. The ones that are meant to be blank are left blank for a reason because we don't have anything in there. Now, if you are jumping in to different chapters out here and you come into one section like 3, and if we're in the third video in that lesson, you'll probably want to jump in and open up 0303 start. Now, in each one of the videos, I'll actually show you which one of these fig files, these are for Figma, to open up. Now, to open one up, I want to show you how to do that. In your browser, after you've logged into Figma, figma.com, if you have a file open, you want to come back to the files in the upper left corner here. You can do it a couple different ways, but this way what you can do is you can come up here and you can choose what's called import the file. So if you click on that, go to your exercise files folder, open up whichever one that it shows in the video to open. For instance, exercise files 06 Collaborate, 0602. Open up that Fig file, which stands for Figma. And it should import the file for you. Then you can start working from that point on. If you follow along the whole course, you don't have to open up really almost any of these. Maybe once in a while I'll tell you to open one up that's a special Fig file, but this is in case you want to jump in at some point and start with one of the files that I've got. To start this course, you need to sign up for Figma. That's the first thing you need to do. So in this video, you'll start by signing up if you haven't already. Then you'll take a tour of the workspace and just get an idea of what's going on in Figma. If you've already signed up, make sure you're on the Figma site, you're signed in, and you can just skip ahead to the workspace part of this video. Okay, so I've got the Figma website open here, figma.com. And the interesting thing about Figma is that it's actually done through the website. So you're actually doing it online. You're creating and working and collaborating online. There is a desktop version of Figma that you can download. I'm going to be using the web version, but I just wanted to mention that you could download the desktop version. If you look here, you're going to see we have features. If you want to, you can go to pricing. Right now, Figma is free for individuals, which is cool. If you're working with a team, you're going to see there's a series of team packages, if you want to call them that. We have a starter team, 2 editors, 3 projects, 30-day history. You can do that if you want to, create an account for that. And when you go in and you start working, I would suggest you just don't jump into a team right away. If you want to, go for it, but just try it out as an individual. And as soon as you get to some of the team features, it's going to say, oh, you need to upgrade. So it'll prompt you at that time. You can go to the starter team, you can go to professional team, which you can see, you guys can figure it out, in the enterprise version. So there's also a lot of stuff in here, but if you go to, you can sign up. If you click on sign up, create a login. I'm going to go to sign in here and just sign in. And there we go. I'm going to update the password or save it for me. Now, when you get in here, you're not going to see a lot of stuff that I have, obviously, because you haven't been in here yet. But just a quick overview of the workspace. You're going to see on the left side over here, we have this little hamburger menu. This is just a menu of options here where you can create a new file to start, import files. Here's where you can get the desktop app. This is where you can work locally. Now, you have to connect to the internet to work with the projects, at least before you start working on them. So it can be a little bit of a pain. It's a good idea if you want to work locally, okay? There's help and a bunch of stuff out here, and there's your settings for your account. Now, on the left here, you're actually going to see that we can search through our projects and through our files, but we will see a recent, a drafts once you get going, and a deleted files if you've deleted anything. So this is where our files are going to live. This is where our different things. I'm not going to call them projects because they're not necessarily called projects. Down here, you may or may not see this, but we can actually create teams. Now, you might just see new team. You're not going to see this. But if you create a new team, you can add what are called projects to the team. You can share stuff with other team members. You can invite team members. And this is where it all lives. This is where you can see it all. So we've got the files we're working with out here. These are the different things we're going to create. Like there's my app right there. If we want to create a new file, there's new file. If you want to import from Sketch, for instance, you can do that there. On the right, you're going to see that we actually have notifications. If there's any comments or anything like that, you can see it. And down here in the question mark, you can actually go in and check out tutorials and help. Help page is actually somewhat helpful. But as soon as you start getting in here, once you start working, you're going to notice that with the files, when I double click on a file, if you have any out here, you can do that. If not, just watch for a second. Once you open a file, it's going to take a second because it's loading it. You can then see the full interface out here show up. And this is what we're going to start to work with in just a little bit. I'm going to go back over. If you did open up a file, you can go back over by clicking the search menu or the menu up here and click back to files. So now that you're signed up and you're signed in on the website, you're all ready to start creating. So you'll begin by creating your very first Figma file. I wanted to include a quick section on enabling local fonts. Otherwise, if you go to work with fonts, you won't have a large selection. You also, if you import things like sketch files, the text may not work. It may not look right. So in Figma, when you're on Figma.com on the website, you're already logged in, come to the upper left corner here where the menu is and come to Account Settings. In here, you're going to see a lot of things we can do. including things like working with the API, which you can expand Figma, do all kinds of things, connected apps, etc. Down here, you're going to see that we have local fonts are currently not enabled by default. So click on Download Installer to enable the local fonts. It's going to download this little, depending on your operating system, it's going to download a little file. And what you're going to do is you're going to essentially open that up and install it. Now, if you want to learn a little bit more about what we're doing, you can click Learn More. I can see that I've got the package right there. I'm just going to click on that. Now, yours might be different if you're on a different operating system, but I'll click Continue. Go ahead and install that. Make sure it's installing. I'll put in my password. And once it finishes here, I'll say Close. Move to Trash. I don't need the installer anymore. And you'll see now that local fonts are enabled. I have this many available in Figma. Otherwise, you'll be working with fewer fonts. So that's something I wanted to make sure that we did before we jumped in here. Now you can come back to Recent and see all the files. Yours are going to look different, don't worry. But the next step we're going to take here is we're going to create our first file. The first thing we want to do, now that we've got the font set up, is we want to create our first file. This is going to be our first design or app or web or whatever we're creating in here. So as long as you're on the Figma.com website and you're logged in, if you look in the upper left here, you're going to see that we have a plus, which means new file. Now you're going to find this in a lot of places. You're going to see over here in the menu, you'll see new file. A lot of places to get this done. But go ahead and click on the plus. And all it's going to do is it's going to create a brand new file that doesn't have a lot going on, okay? It's a little weird actually, but you'll see the full workspace out here, and you'll see we have our toolbar up here. You can see all the different tools. We have over on the left, this is actually layers currently and pages. We can do pages in here. Down here, you'll actually see we can work with components. These are similar to symbols, and they're reusable content, like a button you want to use 16 times or a header or footer. And then we also have shared team libraries, which is a professional team feature. You can see right there we need to upgrade if we wanted to do that. Out in the middle is our design area. This is our canvas. And you can see I actually have rulers showing. You might or might not show those right now. If you come under the menu in the upper left corner here, you'll see that we have all of our commands now. These are all our menus. If you come under View, you can see rulers right there. If you don't see them, go ahead and turn them on right now by choosing it. And you'll also see the keyboard commands to the right there. Now to the far right, you'll see the properties. These are all the properties for everything you're working on. Right now, this is for the canvas. So if you want to, you can go in and set the color of the canvas. You can make it this color. You can do that, whatever you want to do. I'm just going to leave it as is or something like that. And there's a lot of other options under here. If you want to see a pixel preview at 1x or 2x, or show the grid if you zoom in far enough, you can actually see it. It's a little grid of things. And export options. You also have prototype. This is how we set up the prototyping, how we can work with it. And code, if you want to see code for the content or the object you have selected, for instance. I'll click back on design. And you'll see up here we have who's working on it. This is, if you have multiple people and you shared this, you can actually see them all up here and see their cursors out here usually. You can share it with other people. You can also come right here and present it, which is kind of a quick way to just see what it looks like in a blank browser window. Over here you can see the settings we have. These are great, showing, turning things on and off, viewing, zooming if you want to, and export. Now I want to change the name of this. So if you come up here, you're going to see we have, this is now a draft and it's untitled. If you click on the arrow to the right, you're going to see we can do things like duplicate it, move it, do all kinds of things here. I'm going to double click or click on untitled right there, and let's change it to my travel, app. And then press enter or return. And there we go. So we now have our file created. We've named it if we want to. And now let's go take a look at it. So if you come back to the upper left corner here and click on the menu, go back to the files, you should actually see it in there, My Travel App. Now the other thing we can do too is if you come to Recent right here, you should also see it here, My Travel App, because it's something that we are about to work on and we're going to start. Now when it comes to the files you create, you're going to see it's going to tell you like when it was created or updated. Over here on the right, you can see a series of 3 dots there. If you click on those, you can do things like open it, new tab, share it with people, name it, duplicate it, delete it, remove from recent. So there's a lot of things we can do here. Double click on it to open it up, and it should open it back up here. Now make sure that on the left over here, you actually see the layers in the lower left corner down there, and you also see design. That way we can get started. If you work with Sketch, or even people that work with Sketch, or you handle Sketch files, you can import Sketch files directly into Figma. You can do it by using the import method, or you can drag and drop a Sketch file directly into the files area. Now in this video, you'll import a Sketch file from the iOS developer website that has a UI kit that we can use. So you'll have to download a file off that website. So let's do that first. If you open a new tab in your browser, you can open up developer.apple.com/design/resources. And if you scroll down, you should see that there's an iOS app UI kit in here, and you can download it for Sketch. Now I've already done this, but if you click download, you can then either install it, I believe it as you install it, which is kind of crazy, but it essentially gives you a folder full of content that you can work with. So I've got that folder right here on my desktop called iOS 11 Sketch. And in there, we're going to see a UI elements, and we're going to see something for guides and iPhone 10 and that type of thing. So we're going to import the one here that talks about this one, this guides right here, template and guides. So I'll go back over to the browser and we'll import that. So back on Figma.com or in the desktop app, I'll come back up to the upper left here and go back to the files. Now to add this, come up and click on the import button right here. You can do this a couple different ways. And then go into that folder and you're going to see that we've got this one here, UI Elements and Design Templates and Guides Sketch. I'll open that up. Now it's 1.8 megs, which is not that big to you and I, but what's going to wind up happening here is it's going to wind up trying to import it, which essentially means upload it. So it might take a little while. There we go. That wasn't that bad. I'll click done. And if you open it up by double clicking on the file here, the great thing about importing from Sketch is that it recognizes things like your pages, it keeps them pages. It recognizes things like your layer stack, your content, your imagery. All this content is still editable. You're going to be able to go in and work with it, which is great. It's a great way to start from an existing Sketch file or do something like this where we're trying to pull in assets. So if you look in here, if you scroll down at the pages, you're going to see that we have UI elements here. If I click on that, you should be able to see them, and we can pull them into our design if we want to. So let's do that. I'm going to scroll in over here. Now to scroll in here, what you can do is you can use the plus key to zoom in or the minus key to zoom out. You can also see the zoom level up over here. You can do that. What I like to do is I actually use the command key on Mac. I believe it's control key on Windows, and my mouse, so I can kind of zoom in and out like this. If you want to pan around, you can hold down the space bar. You'll get the hand tool like other applications. Let go of the space bar and you can get back to the arrow here. We're going to basically select this right here. So we're going to go ahead and click on that. Now, a fast way to select inside of Figma, you can actually hold down the command key on Mac or control key on Windows and click on an object, and it selects it within. You're going to notice that it's part of a group of objects here. So on the left over here in the layers, click on status bar, and we're just going to copy that. So you can command C on Mac, control C on Windows, and we're going to go back over to our file. So come back up here, upper left, go back to Files. Open up My Travel app, you're the one you created. And we're just going to paste it in there. Command V or Control V to paste it in there. And that's our first object. Now the great thing about this is we don't have to save because it's going to do it for us. As a matter of fact, if you're used to saving Command S or Control S, it's going to say it auto saves your work. So don't worry about it. All right, now we don't have any artboards or pages or screens or anything out here yet. We're just put this out here, paste it so we can use it. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to start to add some content, but we've got our file set up. We're kind of ready to go at least. And one last thing I wanted to mention here is that you can open up sketch files. You can do a lot of things like that. You can also take this file that we're working on and send it to someone else as a Figma file. If you come to the upper left here and click on the menu, come to File, you're going to see we can actually save as a Fig file, a .fig. That's a way for you to bring it to somebody else if you want to put it in Dropbox and give it to them or however that works. You can save it as a separate file locally, which is great. In the first video of this next section, you'll begin working with frames. Now, frames are sort of like artboards you might find in Sketch, Adobe XD, or Adobe Illustrator, but they do have a little bit of a spin on them. Figma considers them to be sort of like special groups. Now, you don't have to use them that way, but they can be nested inside of each other and a lot more. So let's take a look at setting up some frames to start. So hopefully you're still on Figma.com and logged in, and you've got My Travel app open. What we're going to do is we're going to start to add our screens for our app. Now, if you're building a website or designing a website, rather, you're going to create pages. On the left over here, we're going to see the layers panel, and you'll see that we actually have the status bar, and this means group. But if you look at it, you can see the content. We have a page here, which is what we're starting with. This is page 1, and that's all we have to begin with. And if we want to create frames, maybe, like I said, for an app, we're going to create screens. Come up here and you're going to see the frame tool. Now, if you click on the arrow there, you'll see a frame tool and a slice tool. Slice is for exporting. We'll learn about that later. But click on frame tool. And if you look over here on the right, you'll see that we have a series of default sizes we can start from. Even, this is actually kind of cool, social media, if you want to create like a Facebook cover, for instance. You could also draw or, resize later on. It doesn't matter. Come up to phone. I'll click on it right there. And come to iPhone 8. That's going to create what looks like an artboard to me, but a frame in Figma. Now, to zoom out, you can press the minus key, and you'll see you have a frame here. We can drag it around if we want. You can actually drag it from inside as well with no content on it. You'll see a scaling size down there. You can resize it if you want. Resize the dimensions here and do just about anything you want to. And you can also see a lot of the properties on the right. So if you want to change a background color, you can do that. You can say show this in the export or clip all the content. If we put content on this, it's actually going to clip to the edge. So if we draw a rectangle just to show you, you don't have to do this. And I go out and take the rectangle and put it out there on the actual frame. Make sure it's associated with the frame. Now it needs to be put in the frame here. Okay. I'm going to do this. I'm going to drag it into the frame itself. It should put it on the frame and associate it. And if you see, when I move it around, it's going to be clipped. So that's what I'm talking about by clipping content. So, and we've also got a lot of other things, including layout grids and different things like that. So what I want to do is this. First of all, I want to set it back to the iPhone 8 size. So come up to frame, and you can choose a different size or the same size. Change orientation. I want to change the name. So if you double click on the name up here, it's going to take you over in the layers panel there and say, let's change this. I'll just call this home and press enter or return. Now, we'll add a little grid to this. If you want, you can add a layout grid to this. By clicking on the plus on the right, you can do something like a typical grid, which is sort of like a pixel grid. And if you click on this icon here, you can go in and change what you want, columns or rows, or grid for that matter. Let's go to columns, and let's just do maybe a 2-column. That way we have a little bit of gap there for some stuff in the middle. Or you can go 1 column, it doesn't really matter. Actually, let's go 1 column right now. And we'll change the margins. The margins we'll put at 20 and press enter or return, and you should see them out there. Now you can, if you want, change the color by clicking here, change the opacity, and you can stretch them, center them, or keep them to the left. That means if you choose stretch, if we have a layout grid and I drag to resize this, it's going to stretch the layout grid, which is really awesome. All right, let me go back over to iPhone 8. So we've got one frame out here. I want to create a series of frames. So if you take this frame right here, first of all, I'm going to press the space bar to move over. We can just copy this if we want to. You can actually option drag, and you're going to see we have smart guides or something similar to smart guides. Alt drag on Windows, let go of the mouse, then the key. You can also copy paste. There's a million ways to do this, but once you option on Mac or Alt on Windows, drag out a few. Oops, that one missed, so I'll go back. There we go. It should snap in. You should see alignments. And it keeps moving on me. Let me put it right where it should be. There we go. Now on the left, you're going to see that in the layers panel, we actually have them all listed here. If we want to, we can also duplicate and copy and do all kinds of things. If you click on these in the layers panel, let's change the names. So double click on the new home here. And we'll just call this something like login home. And we'll go to the third one here. Double click on the name there. And let's call this hikes. Now later on, we're going to create a copy of this one to do sort of like a modal or a layover, but this is what it means to work with frames. Next, we'll move on to creating and editing pages in Figma. Pages in Figma allow you to organize content in your files on different canvases. For instance, if you create a page to contain an iOS version of an app, you can also create a page to contain the Android version, or maybe create a page to hold all of the reusable elements you want to use, and a page for the app or the website. There really are a lot of uses for pages. In this video, you'll see how to create and navigate a page in Figma. With your travel app open in here, you should see on the left-hand side here that we have the layers of the content in the document, which includes things like the frames that we've created, as well as that content we pasted in. And we'll have pages up here. If you don't see pages, what you can do is click on the arrow to the left of page 1. Now your pages, like I said, can be a lot. You can create a lot of them. In other words, you can create one for the Android, one for the iOS. We've kind of already talked about a few examples here. But if you want to create, let's say, another page that contains icons, and we've got this icon, this status bar icon up here, we're going to copy and paste into there. We can do that. So come to Pages here, click on the plus, and it'll add a new page, and we can name this like icons or something we want it to be, then press enter or return. You're going to see it's not going to contain anything. It's just a big old canvas out here, and we can change the background color and do all kinds of things. Now, the thing about pages you're going to find is that we're not going to necessarily prototype or create connections between pages like this, so they're going to be different. They're going to be separate from each other, that is. But we can do things like export content from each. Now, to show page 1 again here, if you just click on it, you can come to the status bar here, and we're going to copy paste that. Now, if you click on one of the objects here, it's going to select that single object. We're going to talk more about this, but click on status bar, and what we're going to do is just cut and paste it. So if you know the commands, you can do that. You can also right-click right on the object here, and instead of copy paste from one page to the next, you can come to move to page and say, let's move it to icons. Click on icons, the page. That should open it up, and you should hopefully see it down there. Now, don't go grabbing it by an individual object, but grab it by the status bar right up here, and you should be able to move it around. So, like I said, it's treated sort of like a group of objects. This is actually, if you look at the icon, the same icon here, this is a frame. So you can see it's part of a frame. Now, just because it's on a frame, you got to be careful with frames to start with. We're going to talk about what are called constraints later on, but in this case, if we scale this frame, make it bigger or smaller, you're going to see it's going to actually stretch and squish, do all kinds of crazy things with these icons. I'm going to undo that by pressing Command-Z on Mac or Control-Z on Windows. Those are called constraints. If you click on an object on the frame, it's going to either scale or be stuck to an edge based on how you scale the frame. So if you look over here in constraints, this object is actually scaling. If you don't want that to happen when you change a frame size, you can come here and choose like left and top. Just stick it in there, or center it, or do something like that. That way, if I click back on the frame and resize it or scale it, you'll see what it does. All right, let me undo that, Command-Z or Control-Z. I wanted to point that out because if you start messing with the frames with content on them, you'll see different things happening. Okay, now I want to select all this content. So click on one object, shift-click between the other two objects. Let's group them together. So to group them together, you can right-click or Control-click. You can also just press Command-G or Control-G. Let's copy them. So you can copy Command-C, Control-C. Go back over to page 1 by clicking page 1. And we're going to paste it in. And you're going to see it's going to associate it with nothing here. But I'm going to drag it right up here to the top of the home one. And let's put it right up there at the top. Now I know it's white. We're going to create some content later on. We'll talk about that. But let's leave it there for right now. Go ahead and click to deselect. Figma offers a wide range of drawing tools and ways to bring in vector content. So in this video, we'll focus on creating and editing vector content. In the browser with My Travel app open, we're going to add a few shapes. First of all, we'll start by adding a rectangle up here so we can see this content. So click up here, you're going to see we have the rectangle tool, and if you click on the arrow, you'll see all the different shape tools, including arrows, and this is also where you can go to place images. Click on the rectangle tool, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit up here. So I'm going to press Command and use my scroll wheel on my mouse. You can press the plus key. You can use it a lot of different ways, actually. Come up to the upper left here, and we're going to draw or create a rectangle. So click and drag and create a rectangle about yay big. You can see the measurement label, which is actually pretty cool. Let go. And come over here to the right. You're going to see that we have our content here. We've got our fill. We've got our opacity if you want. We can turn off the fill. We can add multiple fills to an object, like an image on top of a color on top of a color. Click on the color over here, and you can change what it looks like. So we're going to make it a little bit darker. You can type in a lot of different values like hex, RGB, CSS, HSB. You can come down here and see all of the colors that you've got available. These are personal colors that we started with, as well as document colors or colors from, you won't see this, or colors from any teams. So let's actually do this. Make the color like this. You can change opacity and all kinds of things. Scroll down a little bit and you should see a plus. Go ahead and click on plus and that should add it to your list. Now my list might be different from yours. Don't worry about that. And there we go. We can now save that. And later on, if we want to edit it, you can actually change a color and right click and either update or delete it. That's kind of cool. Okay, I'll click away. And we're going to take that object, that rectangle, and we're just going to resize it a little bit. And then we're going to put it behind the other object. So with shapes, like any program, you can grab a corner or a side or things like that. But in here, you can come right up to the edge and just drag and change the size of things. And this is going to kind of freak you out a little bit if you use Illustrator, for instance. But it's really awesome. All right, we've got that. Now we're going to arrange it or put it behind. So if you want, you can right-click or control-click on this object and choose Send to Back. It's going to put it behind this content right here, the actual status bar content. So move the cursor over the content in that status bar. Now it might be a little tricky here. And then click and hold down a second. Now it'll show if you've selected it, and then drag it down. And you can position it here. And then let go. There we go. All right, now let's create a button. So scroll down a little bit down here towards the bottom and come up to the rectangle tool again. And we're just going to draw another rectangle starting roughly on the side of the guide here and drag across. And we're going to make this a different color. So come over to the right where it says fill, click on the fill color. And I've already got a blue that I've created. So if you want to try and create this one, you can. You can see the hexadecimal value right there. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to actually change the corner radius. So I'll close this up, click on the X. Now we should see some corner radius options here. If you don't see them, what you can do is you can actually zoom in a little bit until you see them. And you can see them now. Drag a corner radius, you can drag them in to change the value. And if you look on the right, you can also change it over here. Now if you want to, you can actually press the Option key to change one of them, then release the mouse button and the key. Now I'm going to make them all the same again, so I'm going to try and pull them all out here. And you're going to see it's going to take them one at a time. If you want to on the right over here, you can actually say, let's make the corners independent or dependent on each other. Click that and you can change it to something you want, like 20 maybe. Or I'll go a little bit smaller, maybe like 5, a little bit of rounded corner. There we go. All right, we're going to add a little bit of text in a while here, but next thing we're going to do is we're going to create an icon. So if you move up, press the space bar, you can scroll up a little bit. Come up here and click and hold down on the rectangle tool to the right, the arrow there, and come to ellipse and just draw an ellipse. You can see we're just going to draw a circle. Press the Shift key to make it a perfect circle. Now to edit this shape, what you can do is once you let go of all that, you can double click a shape and it'll give you the points. You can then come to these points if you want to and click on them. You'll see the little direction handles. You can start changing them. You can move them by dragging them. You can delete them by pressing backspace or delete, but you got to be careful with that because you might wind up with an open path like this. I'm going to undo that, Command Z or Control Z. And you can also come to a point and Command click on it or Control click on it, and you can change it from one with handles to one without. You can go back and forth. All right, now by initially double clicking to edit this, we're in editing mode. You can see up here we can do a bunch of different things like bend things and all that. Just click done. And then we're just going to draw another ellipse out here. We could have copied the one we had. Draw another ellipse. We're going to make it a little bit smaller this time. And we're going to put it kind of in the center here. You should see the smart guides will kick in to align it. I'm going to use Shift and Option on Mac or Shift and Alt on Windows to scale this from the center once I get it aligned. There we go. If you select both objects by dragging across, we can use a Boolean operation to combine them. So if you come up here, you're going to see the Boolean. Click on the arrow to the right, and you're going to see Exclude Selection. And that should punch it through for us. If you want to change the fill color, you can. I might go to a little bit lighter blue, for instance, or something like that. There we go. With our content starting to take shape and a few more things set up, we'll move on to working with drawing tools a little bit. In the previous lesson, you learned about creating and editing a few simple shapes. In this video, I just want to introduce you to editing with the pen tool in Figma. Now, it's really similar to the ways pen tools work in other programs like Adobe Illustrator, but it's got a few tricks up its sleeve. So let's take a look. What we'll do is we're going to draw an icon, another icon out here. So start out by selecting the rectangle tool, and let's draw a rectangle right here. Just keep it kind of simple. And we'll just create another rectangle. It's going to go right on top, and then we'll punch it out just to make part of our shape. So click the rectangle tool again, and just make a little rectangle right here. I'm going to zoom in a little bit by pressing the plus key. With that selected, go ahead and drag it. And what you can do if you want to is use the smart guides to align things. You can also select multiple objects and use the alignment options right up here. Select both objects. Come up to the top to the Boolean operations. You can also right click and do a lot of different things here. And we're going to say subtract selection, and that should remove it. Now we've got an object that what I want to do is make this look like a sort of like a file box of sorts. So we're going to keep drawing here. Now we're going to use the pen tool to do this. So we're going to edit this object to continue. So double click on it. That should allow you to kind of get in here. And if you look, it actually selects rectangle 3 here. Now if you look up top, you're going to see that we have a button called Edit Object. If we were to double click on this again like we did in the previous video, that's the same thing. So if you click Edit Object, you'll see that we have some different options now up here. If you come to the pen tool and click on the arrow, you have a pen tool and a pencil tool. Pencil tool is definitely more freeform, like drawing with a pencil on paper. But if you come to the pen tool, what you can do is you can actually continue drawing here. You can have more than one path come off of an individual node or anchor point. So if you hover over an anchor point, you should see this circle fill there. Click, and you can go out here and start clicking to make other objects. And you'll see that smart guides are going to help us align these. Now we're not going to make this perfect. If we wanted it to be perfect, we would flip it, rotate it, do all that kind of stuff and reflect it. Well, once I do that, we've got ourselves a shape. Now we can keep drawing here. This is kind of cool. You're making multiple paths on that same path there. There we go. Just keep going. And I'll make it look similar. There we go. Now once we're done here, we could, if we want to, come to an individual anchor point and drag it or move it or do all kinds of things. You can even reshape or bend paths using the bend tool. I don't really want to do that, but we can also tell it what to fill with a color. So if you come up here, you'll see that we have the paint bucket tool. Click on that. It's going to use the same fill that the rest of the shape had. Now, what we want to do is this. We want to hover over areas, and you're going to see we're going to see a plus or we're going to see a minus. If you click when you see a minus, now don't do it here. It's going to do some weird things. You're going to actually subtract color. If you click when you see a plus, like come into this area, it's going to add color in that area. So you can click to add or click to subtract. So we're using the paint bucket tool to tell it what to fill essentially. Now if you press escape, you can come out of that editing mode. If you want to change the fill color of this, what we can do is select the entire object by coming over to the layers panel, clicking on subtract, coming back over to fill, click on the fill color, and you can choose a color if you want to, or you can choose the eyedropper and go out and sample the blue color right over here. There we go. And then I'll close this up. Now if it didn't work for you the first time, you can always go back over here and click on fill to do it. Now we can apply things like strokes if we want to. You can put a stroke around the object. You can have multiple strokes. Within the strokes here, you can go in and change the color. You can change the opacity, change the weight, the alignment. And there's also a lot of options here for changing dashes and all kinds of stuff if you want to do that. Now I don't really want a stroke, so I'll click the minus to get rid of it. And there we go. We've got ourselves a shape. And if you move it around and take a look, you're going to see it's actually going to show you that you can see through it. That's cool. So we got both icons out here. Now, like I said, I just wanted to kind of introduce you to the pen tool editing. There are a lot of things you can do and a lot of paths you can take, no pun intended. But you can hopefully see that the pen tool is actually really powerful and can be a little bit different from other programs. With most of the drawn vector content taken care of, we're going to start to add some other kinds of images and vector content by importing that content and discovering how to mask or hide parts of content. Figma allows you to import a range of image types into your design projects like JPEG, GIF, PNG, SVG, content you copy-paste, and those images are brought into your designs as background images in frames depending on what they are. If they're an image, they'll do that. If it's vector, it'll stay vector, it'd be editable. In this video, you'll explore adding a few image files and kind of learn how they work and also mask content. With my travel app open, let's zoom to fit everything. So you can press Shift-1 so you can zoom to fit. There are a bunch of zoom commands we can use as we go here. And what I want to do is I want to put an image on a couple of these frames. So to place an image, you can learn the shortcut later, but you can also come up here to Shape Tools and Place Image, or come under the File menu and do the same thing. Choose Place Image. Come to the Exercise Files folder, and we're going to come to the O3 Adding Content folder. You should see we've got Hike 1 and a whole bunch of images here. Let's bring in the home background.jpg here. Click open. You're going to see it's pretty big. If images are outside a certain range, it'll actually scale them down a bit. And what I want to do is I just want to click or click and drag to place. So I'm going to click and drag to create the image here. Now it's interesting, but look what it does. It's actually going to fill frame proportionally, so it'll keep it filled. You can press the shift key so you don't distort the frame at all. Let's make it about yay big. Release the mouse button and then the key. You're going to see that mine currently isn't associated with this frame. It's not being cropped or cut out. So you can drag it into the home if you want to, the home frame, and it should be doing this. You can then reposition it, kind of drag it around a little bit if you want to do that. That looks pretty good. Now when we place images in here, you can see that we can scale them and resize them. You can change the corner radius. If you look to the right over here, you're going to see that we can also do things like do blending modes if we want to. So we have objects on top. We can add multiple fills. An image is just a fill. So if you don't want the image anymore, you can either delete the object altogether or remove the fill. You can add a stroke. We can have effects and export it. Now what I want to do is I want to change the look of this. So if you double click on the image, now that was the same thing as coming over here and clicking. You can say, let's make it a fill, let's fit, crop, or tile to the actual frame that we're creating here. That's a bunch of different ways to fit it. You can rotate it. You can change things like exposure, contrast. You can pick another image right here, which is kind of cool. So I'm going to increase the saturation maybe a little bit. That looks pretty good. A lot of things you can do here if you want to try it out. And then close this up. Now let's put another image up here. So I'm going to press the space bar, move over. Come up here to the rectangle tool and click on Place Image. Grab the hike's header. I'm going to do something similar. A little practice here. Click Open. Click and drag. I'll go a little bit smaller. There we go. Now it's not associated yet. If you want to, you can try and move it into the frame and it should snap it in there, hopefully. There we go. And you can scale it if you want to do that. Make it a little narrower. You can grab it by the side, by the edge, however you want to do it. All right, now we're going to place a series of images over here. So spacebar and drag over. We're going to draw frames first, though. What if you want to go in and maybe have an array of profile pics or something like that? Come to Login Home and click on Login Home to select the actual frame. You can also click inside, and you're going to see Layout Grid. Click on the Layout Grid. We're going to make this a 2-column this time instead. That way we have a bit of a gutter in between so we can mess with that. Okay. Come to the Rectangle tool. Leave a little room at the top here, and we're going to draw a rectangle here. And then we're going to copy it a couple different times. So if you press Option on Mac, Alt on Windows, and drag it across all these, or both these, Option on Mac, Alt on Windows, and drag them down. Make it look pretty good. There we go. Now we'll put in an array of images. So come up here, select Place Image. This time we're going to grab a bunch. So click on Hike 1, press the Shift key, all the way down to Hike 4, and click Open. And what you can do, this is pretty cool, you can actually click inside of a frame and place it. So click, 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 click. Now, something else we can do with our images if we decide that we don't like how they're being cropped or presented, we can create a mask. So if I press the spacebar and move over, we're going to put a picture over here and mask it. We're going to place a few vector graphics and an image. So click up here and choose Place Image. Now you can also drag images into your designs if you want to do that. There's a lot of ways to get this done. Copy, paste, etc. But let's go to the gear icon, press Command on Mac or Control on Windows, and click Search icon, and then bio.jpg, and open all those up. And all we're going to do out here is you're going to see, okay, we've got SVG. Go ahead and click to place that. Click to place the other. And you're going to see the image here. Just click and drag to place it out there. Now I'm going to press the Shift key so it doesn't crop any of it off or cut any of it off. There we go. Now why don't you take these two icons and let's move them over here just so we have them out of the way. You can see these are two SVG icons that we can go in and we can continue to edit. If you double click on them, you can actually get into the layers and also the vector objects. You'll see in the layer stack over here what's going on. So whatever was happening in the original application, that's what's happening. Okay, click on this image. I'm going to drag it in the center. You should see Smart Guides help us here. There we go, alignment guides. And we're going to draw a circle. So come up here, select the ellipse tool, press the Shift key, and just draw a circle. Now we can use this as a mask. So with these circles selected, this is kind of weird. This is different from other programs. It's not weird, it's actually kind of cool. What I want to do is I want to send it behind the image because the mask needs to be behind the objects that are being masked. So if you right click here, control click, send backward, come up top, as long as it's behind the image or the thing to be masked, you can click Use as Mask. It's now going to mask. Look over in the Layers panel. This is kind of interesting. You're going to see we have the image itself, which is the bio, and the ellipse. You can click on either going like this. Now, it's kind of tricky out here. If you click, you're going to select the image, which kind of makes sense because then you can go out and resize it and do whatever you need to do with it and move it around. I keep getting it right. And move it around. There we go. If you want to get to the actual mask, you can click on ellipse over here, and that allows us to select and make it bigger, make it smaller, whatever we need to do. That looks pretty good. It's kind of interesting, but if you put anything above this ellipse right now, it's going to be masked by the ellipse. For instance, if you take this image and you arrange it, I'd say right-click, bring to front. It's gone because it's being masked by this. I'll undo that by pressing Command-Z or Control-Z. If you want to remove a mask as well, you can select the masked object. You'll see it's highlighted. You can just turn it off. I'll turn it back on. With a few images out here and a little bit of masking done, the next thing you're going to do is add and format some text. In this video, we're going to take a look at adding text and just adding some text formatting and what that means. We can copy and paste text from other applications if we want to, but you want to copy the text, not the object that the text is in, if that makes sense. So before you jump into text, you want to make sure that you can use your local fonts. And to do that, come up to the menu up here, come down to Help and Account, and you can access this from a couple places, and you'll see Open Font Settings. Click on that. And if you scroll down, you should see that we have the local fonts are either enabled or disabled. By default, they're disabled. So you want to make sure that you download this little installer if you haven't done that already so you can work with your fonts. You have access to Google Fonts in here as well as your local fonts. So we're going to come back to Recent and then come back to your travel app here. You can double click to open it up. And we're going to add a little bit of text. We're going to do it over here. So I'm going to use 2 fingers on my trackpad to move over. You can use the space bar to move over to get to the hand tool. And we're going to draw a box first so we can put some text over this picture so it's easier to read. So come to the rectangle tool and just draw a little rectangle. We'll put it right up over here, off to the side. That looks good. Let's change the color so you can come to the fill. Let's make it a darker color. And we can change the opacity. So come to the opacity right up here. And I'm just going to do this. You can actually use your arrow keys up and down or press shift and arrow to go up and down. You can do that as well. So I'll do it about 90%. Might make that a little different color, maybe black, that's fine. And let's add some text. So come to the text tool up here, and you can either click and start typing or click and drag to create a text area. Click and drag to create a text area, and we'll type in Northwest Hikes. Now it's going to be tough to see, and I think I misspelled it, that's fine. Go ahead and select the text. You can drag across to select. And if you look on the right, you should see now that we have all our text formatting options. If you click on the ellipsis right here, you can actually make it so that these objects are auto-resized. In other words, they will change size based on the width, the height, or fixed. Right now, this is going to be fixed, so it won't change in size even if you add a bunch of text. If you choose width, it's actually going to make it really small, and it'll keep going to the right. And that way, it will never go down. It'll never wrap the text. But if you go to height, it'll let you change it. So there's a couple things we can do here. Now, if you choose height, for instance, you want to come back to this, and what we're going to do is we're going to resize it. So if you click to select the object, there you go, you can resize it again. And we don't have to select the text within if we don't want. We can select the text object. You can come here and choose your font, your formatting, all kinds of things. I'm just going to change the font size here and make it bigger. Let's see what we want to do here. That looks pretty good. Right align. Let's change the color. You can go to fill. I'll choose a white or a light gray or something like that. You can pick whatever color you want, try different things. Maybe I'll change the word hikes down here to a different size so it looks a little bit better. Now what I'm doing is I'm pressing the shift key and I'm using my arrow keys on my keyboard to make the font size larger. Now if you select all the text or select the text object, We can come in here and we can change things like the line height. We've got a lot of options. Paragraph spacing. Come to line height and you can scrub across these values here. So you can scrub left and scrub right. It's the little icon to the left of the field there. Now click back on the ellipsis here and you should see that we do have a lot of other options here. Capitals, lower, uppercase, underline, strike through. A lot of different things we can do here. And if you don't want to see the Google Web Fonts, which are part of this, you can turn them off here. Otherwise, if you want to choose a font family, you just click on the font family and go for it. There's a lot of fonts in there, and you'll see the fonts from your local system as well. All right, let's add a little text to the button down here just to get that done. So click on the T to go to the text tool. Go ahead and click down here just to add some text, and we'll type log in. And you can select that. Center align it so that it's always going to be center aligned. Let's change the color to white. We could save a color if we wanted to for white instead of having to keep making it. And let's change the font size. And you can drag it in place over here if you want to. So it's got the selection tool selected. You should be able to move it over. And you should see Smart Guides. Now what I would do is this. We can actually go in and make sure that as a button, if this is going to change size, we can change the size of this text frame to make it larger if we want to do that. And we can come over to the ellipsis and say we only want the height to change, but we want the width to change. And since it's center aligned, the button text will always stay in the center. So that's good. So leave it at width. Close that up and you can align it to the button. So if you shift click the button to select both objects, scroll all the way up over here, we can do a center align and do it that way. There we go. Now we're going to group them together with them selected. So if you right click on them or control click on them, you can see group selection. As you can see, there are a fair amount of options for formatting and working with your text in here. And I just wanted to give you an idea of what's available. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to start to attack and work with organizing content using layers. Layers are an important part of working with web and app designs so that we can keep our content organized and make it easier to select among a lot of other reasons actually. Now in Figma, content in the layers panel, which is on the left, is actually organized by frames. In this video, you'll explore layers and see how you can use them to your advantage in Figma. Now the layers panel is actually docked on the left here, and if we want to, we can make it a little bit wider, but we can't make it very narrow. It's going to go as far as it is. If you want to hide it, you can come up here to the menu, right up here, and you're going to see we have View right there, and you'll see Layers panel. So we can actually turn off or hide a lot of this different types of content that we've got out here. Now the Layers panel is organized, like I said, by frames. If you look in here, if you hover over things, you're going to see it's going to actually highlight it out there, even to individual objects within a frame that you've got. Now, just like other programs, these are organized according to the frames out there in the canvas. So you can see hikes is the farthest to the right, etc. Now the ordering of the content here makes sense because if you've ever used layers before, you can see that things are stacked one on another. Now what I want to do is I want to take this image right here, and if you hover over it out there, you'll see it's actually going to highlight it in the layer stack. I want to take that and I want to put it behind all the content. So you can drag that up or down to move it around, which is kind of cool. And that way we've got our content at the top up here. Let's make this rectangle a little bit shorter actually, just so it looks a little better. Now we're going to go in and we're going to take that and turn that into a component so we can reuse it later. But one of the other things I love about the layers panel is that we can actually lock content. We can lock individual objects if we want to. We can hide content if we want to from here. A lot of the typicals. You can also double click on objects and rename them if you want to do that, or even see what's in a group, for instance. Each one of these can be toggled open and closed, so you can kind of keep things a little bit more organized. Now what's interesting about layers is that like Photoshop and Illustrator and programs like that, we don't actually create layers in here. It depends on what's out here, what frames we create, what content we add, etc. There's no new layer button in here. And a lot of programs are starting to go that way. Now, if you come to one of the icons here, you can actually double click on the icon to the left, not the name, and it will zoom in so that we can see the object or whatever it's talking about, which is actually really useful. Like other applications, if you want to take an object, you can actually duplicate it by option dragging on Mac or alt dragging on Windows to make a copy. Now, I don't want to do that. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to right click on that object and you'll see we've got a lot of things we can do here. And I just want to delete this. So I'll press escape. I don't see delete in there. So you can press backspace or delete to delete it if you did that. So the layers panel is really pretty straightforward, something we're going to be using quite a bit. It does share with pages here. So if you see the pages, you'll see that it's part of the panel And if you go from one page to the next, if you come here and actually click on one of these, you'll see that the layers panel is only for that individual page, which is actually really useful, I think. All right, let's try and fit everything back in the window. If you press Shift 1, you can kind of zoom to fit everything. There's a lot of keyboard commands we can use in here. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to jump into one of my favorite features out here. We're going to start to talk about components that allow us to work smarter. Being able to reuse content as well as tie consistent elements together can actually be a real time saver when you design an app or a web design. Most programs actually refer to these as symbols, but in Figma, these reusable elements are called components. So in this video, you'll explore how to create and edit components. We'll start with the status bar up here. So click on one of the objects and press Shift 2 to zoom into it, and then Shift click to select the other one. Come up top to create a component out of this or a reusable element. Click Create Component. It's now purple, which means it's the master component. You can see the icon over here, which tells you that. Now we'll copy this and we'll put this in the other frame. So press Command-C on Mac or Control-C on Windows. Press Shift 1 so we can see everything. Click on the name of the frame here, and press Command-V on Mac or Control-V on Windows to paste it. Same thing over here. Click on Hikes, Command-V on Mac, Control-V on Windows. Now you're going to see that it's actually going to be masked by this object here. So what we're going to do is we're going to drag that in the layer stack just below the mask object so we can see it again. Now somehow my frames got out of alignment, so let me drag my home frame down. There we go. Now to edit the components, what we want to do is we want to go back to what's called the master component to edit it. That way they all edit. If you click on one of these, which is a copy, you will actually see Go to Master Component down here as well as the instance name. Now if we change the instance name over there in the layer stack, we can have this say something different. You can also do things like detach the instance, which means this will not update if we update the master instance. So with that selected, go ahead and click on that one. Click Go to Master Component, and it should highlight this one. And all I want to do is change like the time, for instance. So an easy way to select content within a group is press Command on Mac or Control on Windows and click on one of the objects. Double click to go to the text tool, and let's just change this to 1030 something. I don't know, 1035, that's fine. Press Escape, you can get out of there. And if you use the hand tool, press the space bar or move over, you can see that they have all changed out here. 1035, 1035, that's great. Now we'll create a button and save it as a component. So go ahead and scroll down here if you can. You find this button, click on it, and come up and say Create Component. You can change the name if you want to over here. And by the way, all your components actually live right down here where it says Components. You can see it right here. So you could, if you want to, drag out copies from here to create another one, for instance. So why don't you go ahead and do that. Drag one out of the button and drag it out over here. Now you're going to see we have these icons. Why don't you take these and we can move them over on the right over here maybe. And put this button right down about here. That looks pretty good. Now if we come into this one, this is the instance. This is not the master component. But if you come in here and command click or control click on the text here and then double click on it to select it, you can type in, let's say, sign up. Whoops. Sign up. And you'll notice that it didn't change the original because this is the master. If you go back to the master in this case and you do something like this, if you command click or control click on the button here to select the object, do it again, come to fill, and you change the fill color, let me go a lighter blue for instance, you'll notice that the blue or the color is changing, but the text is staying the same. So whatever you detached or whatever you changed on one of the instances will not change from the original. Even if I go to log in here and I double click a bunch of times and I change the text, you'll see this will not update. All right, let me undo that. Command Z or Control Z. Press Shift 1 so we can fit everything in the window. I'm going to take this image and drag it up just a little bit so we have a little more space there. There we go. And maybe I'll drag these. Once you drag these images, you can drag across them and drag them up a bit. Components in Figma can be really powerful just because they allow you to reuse content. So I would suggest that if you have things that you're going to reuse again and again, create components from them. The next thing we'll take a look at is we'll look at something called constraints. In Figma, we can apply constraints to artwork within a frame. Now, constraints let Figma know how to move and resize these items as the frame they're nested in is resized. So let's take a look at working with constraints. So make sure that layers are showing over here. What we're going to do is we're going to take these icons and make them into a component, but we're going to use constraints. So first of all, let's look and see what a constraint is. If you click on this image right here and look over on the right, you're going to see constraints. Now, basically what this means is this object relative to its parent object, which is actually this frame, the login home, can sit somewhere. We can say left, right, left and right, which is going to basically stretch it out, center it or scale it proportionally, essentially, in that direction, I should say. So we can stick it on the left, stick it on the right, however we want to do this. So if I say left and I say top, if we go back to the home here, if you click on login home and take the frame and resize it or scale it, you're going to see what it's going to do is it's always going to stick there. What's really cool is you can do a lot of things with constraints and with the layout grids as well. All right, I'll press Command Z or Control Z to undo that. So we set an object, how it's going to position, how it's going to move or look based on the parent frame. So let's do that to these objects down here. First of all, I want to draw a rectangle. So go to the rectangle tool and just draw a little rectangle down here. And we're going to make it so we have a little nav bar at the bottom. There we go. Let's change the color, come to fill. You can pick a blue, maybe the blue we used over there, or a lighter blue. I'm going to use a little bit lighter blue. Press escape to close that. I want to send it behind these objects. So you can either drag it in the layer stack over there or right click on it and choose send to back. Zoom into it, press Shift 2 so we can zoom in closer. And we're just going to take these icons and we're going to drag them in here. So make sure I'm going to undo that. Drag the icons in here and we'll snap them in. Don't worry, we'll scale these and resize them and do different things as well. But get them in location here and position roughly. And it doesn't have to be perfect. And what I want to do is just shift click between them all. We're going to scale them all to make them smaller. So shift drag to make them smaller. That looks pretty good. Click away and just put the one over here on the right and the one over here on the left where we want them to be. That looks pretty good. Shift click on all these and we're going to use alignments to do this. So come up top to the alignments over here and let's do the align vertical centers. It's going to move them all, that's okay. And distribute the horizontal spacing. Then we'll drag these up. All right, let's change the colors. So if you come to fill, you'll see that there are mixed colors here for fill. Just click on the plus. It'll allow you to replace it. And click to replace it with a different color if you want. A gray, a light, white, whatever you want to do. That looks pretty good. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to take these objects and make sure that they all constrain properly so that they move properly, depending on the screen size we're in. So click on the rectangle, come over here to constraints, and I don't want this thing to stay left and top. I want it to actually scale, and it's actually not wide enough. I'm going to make it wide enough. There we go. Now these icons, if we go to put constraints on them, they're actually going to be constrained to the parent element, and they're going to constrain to these column guides. It's kind of crazy. So what we can do is we can actually take these icons and constrain them to this object, which currently is a rectangle, but we can only constrain to a frame. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this stuff and we're going to group them. We can take a group and turn it into a frame. So with this rectangle selected, shift click to select all these objects. You can drag across too, it doesn't matter. Group them together. You can right click and choose group selection. There we go. Now if you look up here in the upper right, you should see the word group. Click on that and you can convert it to a frame. It's just taking the rectangle object, this guy here, and if you look in the layer stack over here and open it up, you're going to see we still have all the objects and the rectangle. So it made a copy of it, but it put a frame around it, essentially. Okay, with the frame selected, you can tell it's selected over here. Scroll down, and we're going to add a layout grid to this. So click on layout grid, click on grid, come to columns. We're going to say we've got 4 icons, so change this to 4, set the gutter to 0, and what it'll do is it'll just put these lines out here so you can kind of see where they are. We'll make sure it stretches, that's good. Close this up. Now we can go to each one of the icons. And if you come in here and command click on Mac or control click on Windows to select this icon, make sure you actually have the entire icon selected. Right now, command clicking will select part of it. So I'll click on gear icon, come to constraints, and we'll do something like this. We'll say I want it to constrain to the bottom and also the center, which will be the center of the layout grid column. Same thing here. Let's click on this object right here, the subtract. Go to bottom, center. We can actually click on a bunch of these. So if you click on this one, shift click on this icon, we can do these together. Bottom, center. And come to the rectangle itself. You probably have to go over here to the layer stack, click on rectangle, and we're going to say this is going to start at the bottom, and we want it to actually be left and right. So we want it to kind of scale left and right. Okay, the last step here is to make sure that the frame is also constrained. So click on the frame, come over here to constraints. We're going to do the same thing. Go to bottom, and this time we're going to take this one, kind of like the rectangle, and say left and right. And that should do it. That's going to take the frame and the rectangle, make sure they stretch left to right, and stick on the bottom, and the same with these. So press Shift 1 so we can see everything. Click on the frame, click and drag, and we got it. So press Command Z on Mac or Control Z on Windows. If you want to, you can actually take this object and turn it into a component by selecting it and clicking Create Component. That way you can copy this, go to each one of the frames out here, and paste it in place. Now, this is going to get a little tight over here, so we might need to do a little bit of arranging. I'll move this up a little bit, move the buttons up a little bit. Yeah. I might have made the buttons a little bit smaller, but that's okay. So working with constraints is great if you have to put content on different size screens or scale a screen, for instance, or do something like you just saw working with a nav bar. The last thing we're going to look at in this section is called versioning. Figma actually offers version control within each of the files you create. Now, this is actually a really great way to be able to view a previously saved version, restore a previous version, comment on things, and you'll see what I'm talking about. So in this video, we're going to talk about version control. To see the version history, make sure nothing is selected and you can see the name of the file up here. Click on the arrow to the right and you'll see Show Version History. Now on the right, you'll see the version history. What's great about this is that as you make moves or changes or things like that, it's going to auto-save it for you. If you look back down here, you're going to see all the different times that you've done things. And if you click on one of these previous, you'll see it's going to show you what it's going to look like here. Now, this is just giving us a preview. If we really want to make this the version, the current version, if you come to the ellipsis here, you can see restore this version. Now, let's not do that because we'll lose our changes. But you could name this version if you wanted to, which would mean, let's suppose that we're going along, we're saying, I'm just trying to test something. You can actually make it so that if people are collaborating on this file, which we'll look at later, they can see what the version history is and even say, oh, okay, you were just testing something, so that's why we blew by that version. You can duplicate a version, maybe to try a different idea, okay, moving forward. And we can also go in if we want to, and if you double click on one of these, you can edit the version information. So we can change the title. I can say, we added the footer, for instance, something like that. And you can also, well, that's the description, but whatever you want to do here. So I'll click Save. And that's actually going to put a version right out here. You can see it right there. Plus the 3 autosave versions that were above it and the 9 autosave versions that were before it. So it's just a way for us to kind of, if we wanted to collaborate with people and tell them what we're doing and what we're looking at. Okay. Make sure you come back to this one, the 1008. And we're going to say, let's restore this version. So it goes back to the original. Come back up here and go to Show Version History. And you should see we're back where we should be. I did that just in case. I don't want to lose anything for us here. So you'll actually see that because of the plan, the free plan, we only have a 30-day version history. You do have unlimited version history with paid teams, and you can learn a little bit more about it right there. Now, one thing I do love about the version history in here is that we can, if we want, save a current version. You can force to save it. So click back up here, back to editing. Click on this image right here, and let's suppose I want to make a change. So if you make a change, something like that, you can save that version. So if you come up to the upper left here and click on the menu, come to File, you're going to see Save to Version History, and there's the shortcut right there. So if you choose that, it's going to say, let's add a title here. Let's say, moved the image of Brian, and then describe what changed, whatever, however you want to do it. Click Save. I usually do it in the title. I don't know why. And then if you click away to deselect, come back up here, Show Version History. You can see it right there. So it's actually going to name it and put it out there. And we also have the autosave, and we got the other things that we did here. But this is a great way for us to be able to go and add comments. Later on, when we start doing things like collaborating with people, they can see what we've done. We can see their changes, their versions. We can see our versions. And it just makes it so much easier for us to track and see what's going on. Click back to editing. And that wraps up most of what we're going to do here as far as adding content. There's so much more you can explore and learn. But the next thing we're going to start to do is we're going to start to take a look at prototyping. In Figma, like a lot of other tools out there, we can actually create a working prototype to try out our design. Now I've got a file open here. You won't have this, that's okay. But I wanted to show you what we can do with prototype mode. So if we have a design and we want to share it with people, and we want them to be able to test it out. We want them to be able to tap on this button or click on this button and go to another screen, for instance. Over here on the right, we have the prototype tab. Prototype tab is where we can go in to start to create connections between objects by dragging. And that way we can tell it when somebody taps here in this area, and usually it's within a frame or within an object within a frame, to another frame, how's it going to transition? How's it going to go from one screen to the next? And I'm calling these screens, these are technically frames. To preview a prototype, you can click on the present button up here. It's going to open it in a separate browser window. And then we can try it out. So I can click to see what we've got. And anywhere there are hotspot hints, it's going to show you. Once I tap or click, it'll show me what the transition looks like. So it's very simple right now, the prototyping, but it allows us to test out a lot of things that we need to. And this is actually a prototype that's shared in the browser window. And if we want to, we can share it with other people. We can add comments. If I click on the comment bubble here, we can add other comments, and we can view those comments directly within Figma. All right, I'll close this up. So we can create a prototype, a working prototype that is really easily, and that's what we're going to do next. So let's set up a prototype with My Travel app, what we've been working on. A few things to do first, though. Go ahead and press Shift-1 so you can zoom to fit, and then press Control-G so you can hide the layout grids. On the right over here, you're going to see we have the Prototype tab. Click on that, and you'll see the Prototype panel. Now we have a background color, which is actually the color behind in the browser window when we preview this, so you can make it look something different, maybe match something you're going for. We also have Origin. Origin is the first screen or frame, we'll call it because it's Figma, that users will see. So if you have a really large app, for instance, and you have a billion different screens out here, maybe you want to show somebody a particular part of the process. You could go in and say, make the origin that screen like login home, and that's where the prototype would start from. Now make sure it's home because this is a simple app. And then we have connections down here. So the whole idea, this is actually really simple. Whole idea is you either go to a screen and you select a screen, or you select an object. Once you click on the search icon down here, now you're going to need to click a couple times to get in there. You're going to see this little dot to the right. So the dot is basically a connector. So you can drag that connector and connect it to a screen. Once you let go, you've created a prototype connection. Now with that connection selected, and you can actually remove them by dragging off if you want to do that, but don't do that. On the right, you're going to see the transition and the behavior. Now if you hover over it, you're going to see what it looks like. It's going to give you a preview. If you click on Instant, try Push. And what it's going to do is show you what it's going to look like if you go over the transition here to see how it happens. Once you choose certain behaviors, you can set up a duration, which is the time it takes to go from one screen to the next, a direction to go in, up, down, left, right, that kind of thing, and easing. If you want to have it start slow, ease in, end slow, or do both, ease in and out. That way when you hover, you can see what it looks like. Now we can create as many connections as we want. So why don't you come to Login Home here, click on the whole screen on the frame itself, grab that little circle, and connect to the next frame. Once again, we can set up connections. You can try different things. Now we can also remove connections if we want to do that, but we want to try this out. So to try out your prototype, click on Present. Should open in a separate browser window here, usually. It's going to show you the background, which was chosen as black to start with, and it'll start on the screen that you had selected content on. So come down here, you can see the arrows. We can go between screens. Click the previous arrow to go to the first one. And if you come out here and just click in there somewhere, you can see where the hotspots are. So we can see it way down there. Click on that, and it should show you what you got. Now I just clicked again, and it took me over, but the problem with having an entire frame have a prototype connection or action is that if you click anywhere, it's going to take you to that next screen. Now in the upper right here, you're going to see that we have share prototype. If you click on that, it's going to allow you to share this prototype with other people. And we're going to talk a little bit about sharing later on, so I'll get rid of that. Okay, close this up, come back, and we've got ourselves a starting prototype. Now go ahead and press the minus key, and what we're going to do is just show you something really quick here. I'm going to use my spacebar and move up. If you come out here, you should actually now see this arrow. This arrow is the origin, essentially. You can actually drag that to different origin frames, so it's different. I didn't see that before, but now I see it. And let's take this frame, and we're going to duplicate it down. So press Option on Mac, Alt on Windows, and just duplicate it straight down. And if you want to, we could make it to where there's a login screen. Somebody goes in and they tap on login, and they go to this, and it's maybe a modal. It's an overlay, for instance. If you come to the rectangle tool, let's zoom into that object. So press Shift-2 to zoom into it. Now let's draw a rectangle. It needs to be a little bit bigger than the whole thing here, so we're going to make it a little bit bigger, but go a little bit larger. I'll go back up here and make it larger. There we go. Come back to design. You're going to wind up going back and forth between design a fair amount and prototype. Come to fill here, and let's maybe choose a darker gray. And then let's apply an effect. Come to effects, and you can see we've got a lot of effects. If you click on the plus, we can add a drop shadow if we want. We can do things like layer blurs, inner shadows, or background blurs. So if you choose background blur, it's going to blur everything behind it. Now, we need to change the fill transparency here to something that's lower. So I'm going to press the Shift key and use my arrow keys down. And you're going to see it's going to do a little bit of blur back there. Now, how much blur depends on our effect settings. So if you click on this little icon here to the left of background blur, you can change the blur amount. So we can make it more blurry, less blurry, that kind of thing. And that way, we're just simply setting up an overlay. And if I zoom out a little bit, we can make it to where if somebody taps login, they come here, and it's an instant transition. So anyway, that gives us an idea of some of the things that we can do as far as prototyping are concerned to be able to share and create things. Next, we're going to start to take a look at working with teams in Figma. With Figma, you can create a team and invite users to that team. This actually makes it easier to share projects and files, so anyone you decide can view, make edits, comment, and more. You can decide the roles that team members play by setting permission levels. In this video, you'll just see how to get started with a team. So in Figma.com, come to the upper left here and go back to the files, and you'll see that we actually can create a brand new team. Now, I already have a team, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove this team because you aren't seeing this. To remove a team, I can select it and say, I want to leave it. So there's actually an arrow up here. It says, let's leave the team. Are you sure? Once you leave a team, if you're the last one to leave it, it's gone. It'll disappear. Okay, now, you'll probably see this. It says new team. So come over to new team, click on new team. We've got a series of people that we want to work with, and we want to share files and do things like that. So we'll probably create a team. I'm going to call this our app, really simple. Create the team. You can also authorize Slack, so you can use that with your team. So create a team, choose a team plan. Now you can see here that you have a starter plan where you have 2 editors. You also have unlimited files and viewers, and you have up to 3 projects with a version history of 30 days. I would suggest you start that way unless you know you're going to go full bore and you just need to use this. Then you go right to professional. Get started for free is free. Professional, you're going to pick a level, you're going to start paying, etc. Now, you will see some other things here that you need to consider if you want to be able to do that, like Slack integration. Click Get Started for free, and we've just created a team called Our App. Now, with our team, what we do is we actually will create projects that we associate with the team. We also go in and we upgrade our app if we want to do things like enable Slack authorization. And down here, we're going to invite team members. So let's invite a team member. If you have somebody you can invite, I'm going to do that by picking an email address. So I'll click Invite a Team Member. I'll type in their address. There we go. Now you can say, and you can do multiple if you want, multiple people. You can say they can be an admin, so they can actually do things like set this up, edit this. They can deal with the billing and things like that. Can edit, they can edit the projects, files, things like that. Can view, just view everything. So click Invite. And you'll see, this is me. I know it says Brian and Brian, I know. But it's Brian is me, and this is another Brian that can view it. And what I'm going to do is say, can edit. So I've invited somebody to the team, and I want to show you what it looks like for that person when they get the email. So this is the email that the other Brian is receiving, the person that I invited, and all they have to do is accept the invite. What I'm going to do is I'm going to cheat here because I'm already in the browser. I'm actually going to copy the link address. I'm going to go to another browser. That way I'm not already logged in, and you can see what it looks like. Okay, in my other browser, I'm going to paste that URL and go take a look at it. When you invite someone, they're going to want to sign in with Google or an account they create. So I'm going to go through this. I'm going to say, Brian G, what kind of work do you do? I don't know. I'm going to create an account. Looks like I already have an account, so I'm going to say, let's sign in. I'll save the password. Hopefully that's correct. And there we go. Now this other Brian actually has other things going on. They've got other files and things like that. But you can see here that I now have two team members. This is Brian. This is me. It says you. And we have the other Brian. I know it's confusing. I'm not the owner, okay, but the other Brian is the owner. So now we can start looking at the projects and kind of working together. Okay, so I came back to myself. I am Brian Wood. You can see I am the owner again. The other Brian is out there in another browser somewhere else. The next thing we are going to do, we just set up our team. We're going to start to set up a team project. Once you have a Figma team set up, whether it be a free team or a paid team, you can start to add projects. So that's what we're going to do next. So with a team created, come up here to create a project and click on that. It's going to create a project for us. And we'll just call this hiking app. Whoops, keep doing that. And if you look down here, we can set permissions. We are the admin for this, so we can set permissions here and say everyone can edit, everyone can view. Invite only, let me choose who has access. That's a little more granular level, and that's actually really cool. Right now, I've only got one person beside myself who's on the team, so I'll say everyone can edit. Click Create Project, and we've got our project. Now we need to add files or a file to this project. A project is essentially a collection of files, which is a great way to keep all of these associated things together. You can, if you look down here, drag and drop different things in here, JPEG, PNG, or sketch files. You can import or you can create a brand new file if you want to start from scratch. We're going to import something that I've created. So click up here, Import File. Come to the Exercise Files folder, the 05 Teams folder, and open up the appdesign.fig file. It might take a minute to import it. All right, now that it's been imported, you can click Done, and you'll see that we've got the file there. Now we can, like I said, keep adding files here, and as soon as we start adding files to this project for this team, everybody else can see them. So let me show you what I mean. Now I've switched over to another browser, and I am the other person that I've invited, and you can see that immediately I see hiking app right here. So this is a project that was added. So if I click on that, you're going to see, oh, there it is. Okay, cool. And I'm also going to see a notification up here. Click in the upper right, there's a notification. And it'll say, Brian made you an editor of the Team Hour app. So this is where we're going to go if we're starting to do different things, starting to change roles, etc. You're going to see these notifications up here, which is really great. Now, as somebody who didn't create this, I'm looking at this, somebody else created this and added this file to this project. If I want to see this over here now, you're going to see add a project to your favorites to see it here. You can click on this little star in the upper right corner to add it to your favorites. That way it will show over here. But if you always go back to our app, for instance, you should see the different projects within. All right, I'm going to switch back over to myself and open up this file within the hiking app project. So double click. Now that we have a free team set up and we've created a project with a file inside, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about creating a shared library. Since we're talking about teams, I really wanted to talk to you about what are called team libraries. These are a great way to be able to share things like components across a team. That way you have a central location or a central area where you can share assets. This can be a way to share a design system you're creating, for instance. So with a project file open here, and it's part of a team, if I come down here, you're going to see we actually have our components. If I click on components, you can see we've got our components there. Now, these are things that were saved before. And if you look down here, you'll also see publish file to library. This allows the other team members to be able to use these components. Down at the bottom here, you're actually going to see the team library. Now, this is a professional team feature. So it's not going to be used with the free team version. So we need to upgrade our app if we're going to use this. So let me do that. I'm going to click Upgrade Our App. We're going to take a look. This is basically the admin area, essentially, which we can get to. And these are the editors on our team. And if you look here, it says you will be charged for all editors. You need to be careful of that. If you have 100 people, which you really can't, but as a free person, but you would go in and you say downgrade to a viewer so you don't have to pay for them. So I'll click here, choose a payment plan. I'll do a monthly plan now. And I'll enter the payment information. So I'll be back in just a second here. All right, I've entered my credit card info. I'm going to accept the terms here. And we've just been updated. So now we are a professional team. At least I am part of a professional team. So you're going to see here that they're going to renew monthly every month. And if we want to, we can do an annual plan. We can do all kinds of things here. You can upgrade people, downgrade people so you don't pay for them the next month. There's a lot of things we can do here. Okay, now we can start using the team library sharing feature. So back to our app. I'll click on our hiking app there and then double click the file here to open it up. Back in the file, you should now see that we have the team library tab open here and there's nothing published yet. We have to go to components to do this. So click on components. In this panel, you'll see publish file to library. Now this basically means it's going to take all of your components and publish them. What you can do if you want to is publish them independently. So I can click on one of these, right click on it, and you'll see publish the one component. Or you can just simply say publish file to library. Now it's going to seem misleading here because this is selected, but it doesn't matter. It's going to publish them all. So if you click publish file to library, it's going to publish them. It says published in library. You're now going to see that each one of these, if you click on them, is going to have a minus sign. That's going to say remove it from the shared library. Now come down here to the shared library and click on App Design, and you should now see that we've got our two different objects in here. If we want to use these in another file, for instance, or in this file, you just drag it out and you can add an instance essentially. So we've got one in here. Now if we want to use it in a different file, this is the best part. You come back up here, go back to the files. Let's insert a new file. It's a blank file. Should open it up. And you're going to see we still see the team library. Now you can start working with that content within another file. Now the great thing about this is that if we come in here and we decide, you know what, I need to edit this. If I come in here and start double clicking and grabbing and clicking on content, I can go into fill, for instance, and start changing the fill color. And you're going to see it's not going to do anything for me. Like working with components, we need to go back to the original library item. So if you come back to the library item here, if you right click on it, you can also see it over here, go to master component. Click go to master component. It should open it up. It's going to open a separate browser window here just because it's a separate file within the project. Okay, it's highlighting it for me. If you come into this object and command click on Mac or control click on Windows to select this rectangle, and we go over here maybe to fill or stroke or something like that, or I'll go over here to percentage. We'll change the opacity and crank up the percentage a little bit. There we go. Making a change here. Now you're going to see down here, it says publish your changes to your team library. Do you want to publish or dismiss? I'll click publish. That's going to say, all right, bottom, the name of this component will be updated in the library. It'll go from this to this. So I'll click publish changes. That should make the change. Publish the version of the team library. If I go back to the team library now and take a look at app design, there it is. There's the update. If I go back over here, this is the one we created. You're going to see component updates available. Review it. Okay. There's a bunch of them. We can update all or we can not update if we want to do that. I'll click update all. And there we go. It's updated. There are a lot of nuances to working with team libraries that you'll discover, but this is most of what happens. Now what I want to do is show you what's going on with the other person, the team member that I invited. So let me do that. I'll switch over. All right, so I'm now the other person. I'm the team member that was invited, and I've got these two files now that showed up. I'm going to open up the one here, double click, take a look at it. And what I want to do is I'm going to take a look at the team library. I can see it already updated here for me. That's good. If I go into the team library, come in here, you're going to see there's the change right there to it. That's good. And if I keep going back to the files, and go back over to this file, this one right here, untitled, I should see the change as well. Now, this is actually kind of cool. You can see my cursor. So this is the person that invited me. I can see their cursor, so we're now starting to work together. You can see I've got two people showing here. We'll talk a little bit more about that in the next section. Let me switch back over to myself. All right, I'm back over here. I'm going to go back over to my files and come back to the main file here, the app design file. If you want to do that, you can. One thing about these, working with components and working with team libraries, is if I come into components here and take a look, you're going to see that all of these are published in the library. If I want to, clicking on the ellipsis here, you can actually remove the files from the library. Now you got to be careful because it's going to pull them all out of that library. I'm going to click cancel. You can, if you want to, if you click on one of these options here and you click on the minus, you can remove an object from the library. And that's going to say, okay, we're going to publish that one change. It is now private to this file. So you can actually have components in a file that are private to the file or that are part of a team library. So I'll click publish one change. It's going to be removed from the library, publish changes. There we go. I can now see I only have one, which is navigation. And the navigation, if I drag this out just to show you, is this little, it's actually the hamburger menu and that stuff up top. Now, if I go back over to the files that we had open, like this one, this is the old one. Let me go back over to the files. It gets confusing with so many things open. And I open up this one. This content is still here, but it's no longer part of the team library and it's no longer a component. So that means that I could go in if I wanted to and actually edit this. I can say, oh, let's change the fill of this thing to yellow, and it won't affect anything else. So the team library thing is actually really important. It's something that we're going to use a fair amount if you work with other people. That way you can take design systems and all kinds of shared content and put them in a team library that you can share. Once we have a Figma file or project created, what we're probably going to want to do is share it with people, gather feedback, and also view it on device. So the next thing we're going to look at is we're going to look at what's called Figma Mirror. Now this is an app, a mobile app, and let me show you what I'm talking about here. Figma Mirror is an app you can download from the Apple App Store or from Google Play. It's available on iOS as well as Android. And it's a way for you to be able to view your projects or your files, I should say, on your device. Now, all you need to do is you need to have an account with Figma, obviously, and you need to have the app installed on your device. And then you sign in. You can see on the right over there, I'm about to sign in. This is my iOS device right now. If you don't have an account, you can create an account. You can also sign in with Google. But I'm going to go in here and sign in. So I'll be back in just a second. All right. So I just signed in. And it's telling me right now that I need to select a frame or component that's directly on the canvas. Now, the way this app works is it actually works with having your device on a wireless network or connected to the internet so that it can access the files and projects and things that you're working on. So if you have Figma open in a browser and you have this installed on your device and you've signed in, let me make it so I can see both here. It's going to be a little tight. That's okay. I got another window open back there. And what you can do is you can open up your travel app if you want to do that. I'll double click to open it up. Now this is in Figma in the browser. And what we want to do is we want to actually click on a frame. Let's click on home, for instance, like the name of the frame up here. And on device, you're going to see it's going to say preview is loading. Now, what it does, this is kind of interesting. It's actually doing a 100% preview. Now, it's not fitting to the device size. It's actually just, like I said, showing it at 100%. So if your frames, for instance, are smaller, like their iPhone 8, and you're viewing it on a 10 or something like that, it might look a little different in size because it's not scaling it. So we can go and click on each one of these frames to take a look and see what it looks like. Now, if you start clicking on objects, you're not going to be able to see it over there unless it's actually a frame or component that's directly on the canvas. Now, currently with Figma Mirror, you'll see that if I go out to the device, I'm looking at it right now, and I tap on it, it's going to say, okay, we're connected through Wi-Fi. If I tap again, it's going to show the screen. We are not actually testing any prototyping on here yet. So this is something that we're just using it to view, to see what it looks like, and kind of work from there. Now, if you don't have this available, if you don't have, the app, you can't get to it, or you have a different version of Android, because I believe it requires Android 7 Plus, you can actually go to figma.com/mirror. So you can actually type in figma.com/mirror on your device, in the browser on your device, and it will show you whatever you've clicked on as far as a frame in your file. So this is one way to get around the fact that you might not have access to the Figma Mirror app on your device. So this is just a fast, quick, easy way to be able to see what your frames look like. In other words, what your files and projects are looking like directly on device using Figma Mirror. Something else that Figma does really well is sharing files. Now we can share files in a lot of different ways, as we've seen. And if I've got my travel app open here, if I come to the upper left corner, I'm in Figma, I'm signed in, come under File. You can save as Fig and share it with other people if you want to do that. You can also export different content, which we'll talk about soon. Now the other thing we can do is we can actually share with other people. That means that we could have a real-time collaboration if we wanted to, or for commenting or other purposes. If you come to the upper right here, you're going to see we have Share. So if you click on Share with a file open, you're going to see that you can share it with different people. So it doesn't have to be one person, it can be multiple people. Anyone with a link can actually do something like view it or edit it. You can also remove the link access. If you click on anyone with a link, it's going to copy it to your clipboard. You can then email it to someone if you want to do that. Down here, you can see this is you. Here's where you can invite someone. I'm going to invite somebody else. I'm going to use an email address I've been using. And this is another Brian. It's me. And down here, you can also copy the link or do a public embed. The public embed is kind of cool. If you click on that, it's going to give you an iframe code that you can copy and paste somewhere else, maybe like a blog or wherever, and it's going to show up. So it's going to show your file that you're working on. So I'll click cancel. Now you can tell the person that they can edit it or view it and invite them. So if you want to try this out, you can enter somebody's email address that you know that you can access, or that they'll email you back. Click invite. And they're invited. You can see they're grayed out until they actually accept. Now let's take a look and see what the email looks like. This is the email that the other person received saying, Brian has invited you to edit this app or this file. And we're going to open it in Figma. So the other person is going to go and click on this and go in and start working on it after they've logged in. So I want to show you that. Now I can't do it in this Chrome browser. I'm pretending to be a second person. So what I need to do is I need to actually copy this link address and go to another browser where I haven't logged in yet. So I'm going to copy the link address and I'll go over to another browser. Okay, so I've just pasted it into another browser. And you can see that it's coming in and opening the file. Now I can't really do much here. I can look at it and see a preview and stuff like that. If I come up here, you're going to see, well, you got to log in. So I could right now sign up with Google. I could create an account. We're signing up to create an account. I already have an account. So I'll click sign in. This is a free account. Now let's see if it works. Now that I'm in, I can see the file. So this is the one that was shared with me. Now I'm going to go back to the owner of this, the admin, which was me. Okay, so here I am. I just came back, and I can now see that this is no longer dimmed or grayed out. He has accepted the invite. He can edit it. And if I click away here, I can invite other people if I need to. But if I click away, you're going to see now that I can actually see the person's cursor right there. So as you start to, if you both have the file open, I should say, and somebody can edit, they're going to be able to do things like edit alongside of you. Up here, you're going to see the users that are actually signed in, and you can see who they are. Now, what I want to do is this. I want to show you both windows. I'm going to split these, so I'll be back in just a second here. Okay, so I've got two people working on this now. On the left, I've got somebody, and on the right, I've got somebody. If you notice, this is me working on the file. You can see that I'm moving my cursor. Now, look over on the left over there. You're going to see whoever is also looking at this file that is being shared with. Maybe it's the admin, maybe it's another person. They can actually see my cursor. So if I click on something and I go to move it or scale it or do something, look what's going to happen here. They're going to see that in real time. So this is collaborative editing. This is actually pretty awesome. That way you can talk to people. You can do it via commenting a lot of different ways. You could be working over Slack. You could be doing all kinds of things, talking on the phone. I don't know. But as soon as I switch back over here, you're going to see that now you notice my cursor from this side. That's because, once again, this is the admin on the left, and on the right is the person that has been invited. So you can watch each other, you can collaborate, you can do all kinds of just amazing things to make it easier, smarter, and faster to work on your files in here. Now you will find that because Figma is saving things, so if we go in and we move something, it's going to be saving for us doing the autosave. If two people do a change really close to each other on the same object, for instance, it's going to try and keep the latest change, the latest update. And if we're going back and forth, I'm saying, oh, this person just moved this or just changed the color of this object or something like that. Let me go in and change the color, make it a little darker, a little lighter, something like that. And I made it the same exact color. You believe that? Okay, there we go. Let me change the fill. Go to lighter color. There we go. Change both of them. Now, if we go in and we take a look, I'll show you. I'm going to put it back to just the admin here, to me. If I click to deselect, you're going to see we can come up here and we can actually show the version history. If you look at the version history, you're going to see we have a couple autosave versions. We have a couple things going on here, but it's still doing the autosave content, which is great between the 2 of you or 3 of you or how many you have. Now, another thing I absolutely love is that if you come up to these circles up here, the people, this is me. So I'm on the admin right here. I can see that this other person right here has got his cursor out there. If I come out here and I actually click on this, I'm going to be observing this person. That means that they're sort of presenting to me. I guess that's what they want it to be like, which is kind of cool. So I'm observing this other person. And if I drag this over again to show you, just to give you an idea, if this other person moves around, you can see what's going to happen here. So now I'm not the admin anymore. I'm going in and looking at this. I can actually watch the other person go in and work and do things and see what's happening. That's pretty awesome. The little icons up top are actually really helpful to be able to tell who's in the file, who's doing what. You can see the circles out there. So you can see what I'm looking at now. That's me. And just everything that's happening. So I'm going to go back to editing here. Click on that. And if the other person leaves the file, we can, that's great. We won't see their cursor anymore. We can also come to share here and say that, if I click on the arrow here, we can remove that person. They can only view it. And are you sure you want to remove them? I'll remove this other person. And there we go. They can only view it basically. So they can no longer do editing and different things like that. So being able to share your files in this way is just an extremely fast and easy way to be able to collaborate, to work together on your design files. Now, another way to be able to collaborate or to gather feedback is to work with commenting. And that's what we're going to take a look at next. Now, along with being able to share your files is being able to comment back and forth. So let's take a look at how to comment in your Figma files. Now, you can do this in individual files. You can do it in projects. You can do it in teams, as long as you share it with somebody so they can view it in some way. It's either by, sharing when you're prototyping or sharing right here when you're editing your files. If you're working on your files and you've got a file open, in the file, you're going to see a little comment bubble. If you click Show Comments, it's going to show a comments pane on the right. And you can actually receive email notifications, or those that are involved in the commenting can receive email notifications. So if you come out here, if you want to leave a comment, you can simply come up to a frame, for instance, and click and just type in something. I could say, let's add 2 more pics. Really cool thing. If you've, shared this with people, if they are sharing with the file, you can actually use an @ symbol and put in their name. So you can tag them directly, essentially, and they'll receive an email and all that kind of thing. And they can reply to this. So they'll know which one you're talking about, which comment you're referring to. So I'm just going to say add 2 more pics and I'll post it. There's also little, if you look right here, in some cases, little smiley emoticons, things like that. I'll click post. And you're going to see, okay, there it is. I want to put another comment, go for it. I don't have to. But I'm going to see a listing of comments over here on the right. Now, if I've shared this with people, so if I click on share, you're going to see that I've shared it with this person, Brian W. They can view it. Now, even viewing it, they don't have to be able to edit it. They can go in and comment as long as they've logged in with their Figma account. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy the link here, go over to another browser, and I'll show you what it looks like commenting back and forth. Okay, so I'm in another browser. I'm the other person. I'm this other Brian. And I open up this link that was sent to me. And if you look, I have to sign in to do something. It's not going to let me comment this way. So I'll click sign in and create account. I'll click sign in and sign in. All right, now, even though I can't edit anything really, I can still see the comments right up here. I'm actually going to see there's a little comment with a little notification right there. So if I click on that, I can see the comment right there. And if I come in here and click on this, you're going to see that I can sort of see what it's looking like over here. I'm going to actually reply to this comment. I'm going to say, no way. Bam, reply. And you're going to see 1 reply. Now, we can go back and forth this way if we want to. You can actually, once again, if you're sharing, you can actually see other people's cursors moving around and things like that. But doing this is an easy way to be able to track and see where all of the comments are. You can even move this little window out of the way if you don't want to see it, or put it down here or something like that. And if I click, and you can hide it, do all kinds of things. I'm going to add another comment here and say, remove this. And I'll say post. Okay, now I'll go back and I'm going to see the admin. So let's see what's happening here. Okay, so I'm the admin again. I'm going to go back and I can actually see that I've got a comment notification here. It's telling me I would actually receive an email typically if this was on, and I should be receiving emails now. But I can actually go in now and see, okay, well, there's that person's cursor. That's great, but I can see the comment they made. If I click on that, I can say remove this, and we can go back and forth. We can also do things like resolve comments. If you're done with a comment, maybe you've made the change, that kind of thing, you can click resolve. That's going to remove it from here and from the list. And if you want to see it, you can choose show resolve comments. And that way you will see the resolve comments down here, and you can see the sort of a trace of what was happening before. And you can actually see some of these comments are ghosted because they were resolved. Now, one last thing I want to mention here as far as commenting, this type of thing, you can come up to this icon and just at least one thing here. You're going to see multiplayer cursors. Multiplayer is this mode we've been in, basically, where you see multiple persons' cursors out here. You can turn that off if you really want to do that. So there are a lot of things we can do as far as being able to collaborate, also comment, to be able to talk back and forth, make changes, do the things that we need to do, and have a listing or a history of comments that we can go back to. The last thing we're going to do is we're going to go in and we're going to start to export content. After you've gone through and you've created your design and you've done your collaboration, you can go through and start to export your content. Now let's take a look at that. So if you've got a file open, what you can do is you can export in a lot of different ways from here, and you can export in multiple formats. If you have nothing selected, come over to the right. You should see with the file open, with the design tab selected, you'll see down here we have export. If you click on the plus, you can choose from different formats if you want to: PNG, JPEG, and SVG. You can set up things like the scaling if you want. 1x is basically 100%. We can add a suffix to the file name if we want to, which appears at the end. You can then export it. You can click on preview. Now, what's interesting about this is that we had nothing selected, and what it's going to do is export everything, all the frames, as a single ping. This is if you wanted to send it out and say, take a look at everything I'm working on, okay? One big picture of it. If you click on the minus here, you'll remove the export setting. That way it won't do it for us. Now, suppose that we want to export all the artboards or the frames as different images. If you drag across or you select all, it's called. Let me move back up here. You can also shift click to select all the different frames over there. Scroll down in the right, come to export and click on the plus. You'll see once again, we choose a file format that all of these are going to be exported as. So if I want PNG, that's great. I'll do that. Come to preview, you can click on preview here. Scroll down if it will give you a preview. Mine's not doing it. And you can either click export to export the 4 different layers here, or you can come up to the upper right, click up here, and you'll usually be able to see a preview right up here. Now it's going to go in and say, which ones do you want to export? And right here, you'll see that this frame or this layer is a duplicate name, so it's not going to want to export that. But we can click export here or export 4 layers down here to be able to export the different files in a folder. Now, another way we can do this, click to deselect. And by the way, when you put on export settings onto things, if I click on home, for instance, later on and scroll down, you are going to see it's going to retain those export settings, even if you share this file with someone, which is really pretty cool. If you click on an object, like a button, or multiple objects if you want to do that, you can click export. And once you apply an export setting, like I just said, it's going to remember it. So if I come to PNG, choose SVG from that, you'll see there are 3 dots right here. If you click on that, you can do a couple different things, like include an ID attribute if you want to, outline any text, which you got to be careful. If you try to copy paste this content to another file or to another app, for instance, the text is going to become shapes. Or just the contents only. You're going to see right here, any overlapping foreground, background layers will be disabled, which is great. That's actually good. So it's only the content you selected. All right, I'll close that up. And then click Export Group 2. it's going to export it for you, and it should put it in your downloads, and you should be able to see that. Now, like I said, once you assign a lot of this, it's already there. Later on, if you give it to somebody else or you come back to this file, those export settings will be there, which is great. Another key, easy way to export content from here, if you're trying to take content from here and go to, let's say, another program, maybe like Adobe XD, you can come to content and right-click on it and choose Copy As down here, CSS or SVG. So if I choose SVG, it's going to copy it, but it's going to take that text and turn it into outlines. If I go to another application like Adobe XD, okay, I'm in Adobe XD now and I paste, there it is. It's a group. I can look at it, but the text are now a series of paths. Okay, let me go back over to Figma. Another way to access that, if you want to copy as, if you come into the File menu up here, right up there, you're going to see Copy As, CSS, Text, or SVG. So as you can see, just a lot of different ways to be able to export your content. That way you can start building this when you get ready for production and you've got production-ready assets. Well, you made it through. I just wanted to include this video as a chance to say thank you for watching the Figma tutorials, and know that Figma's getting to be a little bit bigger program. There's more and more added to this, and they do a lot of updating. Come back, do a lot of practicing, look at the Figma help to see what's new. You're probably going to find that things change pretty quickly.